I can't believe you didn't show up for your husband's surgery. You're an awful daughter-in-law. This is unacceptable. My mother-in-law called me early in the morning and started shouting as soon as I picked up the phone. What do you mean? I don't have a husband or in-laws, I exclaimed, completely baffled. What are you talking about, Melody? She pressed, her voice trembling with anger. You're Easton's wife, aren't you? Have you finally realized how unsuitable you are as a wife? She continued, waiting for my response. Taking a deep breath, I replied calmly, Haven't you heard from Easton? We're already divorced. Her silence on the other end was priceless, but the real surprise came next. My name is Melody. After graduating from a local university, I decided to work for a major company in New York and started living alone. Life in the city and my first job were both daunting, but I was filled with more expectations and motivation than anxiety. I would summarize the work I learned from my seniors in my notebook on the same day and check what I should do the next day. My serious work style was appreciated by both my seniors and bosses, and by the time I had been with the company for a year, I gradually began to be entrusted with various tasks. When junior colleagues joined the company, I became a senior and naturally became more involved in educating my juniors, wanting to return the favor I had received from my seniors. One of those juniors was Easton. Easton had graduated from a top university's master's program and was already a respected figure when he joined the company. I, who was full of motivation at the time, was appointed as Easton's mentor. The smart Easton immediately understood what I said and learned more and more about the job. It was an exciting experience to convey my own experience to Easton and see it applied to the job. Easton's well-targeted questions became an opportunity for me to grow as well, and we started going out for drinks together after work, not just during work. I soon realized that spending time with Easton was more enjoyable than anything else, and Easton felt the same way. Hey, are you two dating? A common senior who saw us going out for drinks every day and getting along well asked us that. No, it's not like that, I replied, laughing. But I want to date Melody, Easton said, looking directly at me. It seems so. What about you? The senior continued, prompting me. I also want to date Easton, but, I admitted shyly. Thus, Easton and I started dating with the company's approval, and 2 years later, we got married with blessings from both inside and outside the company. Easton, I feel fulfilled with my current job, and above all, I enjoy it. Even after we got married, I want to continue working, I told him after we were married. Of course, I fell in love with you, who is lively and passionate about her work. I'll help with the housework from now on, my husband said, respecting my feelings and agreeing to a dual income lifestyle. However, his mother did not approve of our life. During my first New Year's visit home after getting married, my mother-in-law confronted me. Melody, when are you going to quit your job? She asked abruptly. Well, as I've said before, I find my work fulfilling, so I plan to continue working for the time being, I replied, trying to stay polite. You've been married for a year already. You should have children soon and leave the job to your husband. You should focus on being a good wife, she insisted. But Easton and I have talked about this, I explained, hoping she'd understand. He is just being nice to you. It's ridiculous to make your husband do housework, she shot back, dismissing my attempts to reason with her. No matter how much I tried to explain, she wouldn't listen. Easton stepped in to help. Wait a minute, Mom. Melody and I have talked about this. Fine, but that won't change the fact that Melody will just keep pushing things too far, my mother-in-law huffed. I'm happy with our life right now. If there's anything wrong, we'll talk to you about it, my husband replied, firm but calm. Well, if my son says so. With Easton's words, my mother-in-law reluctantly backed down. I thanked my husband quietly. Thank you, Easton. No, I'm the one who should apologize for putting you in this position. If my mom bothers you again, let me know immediately, he replied, reassuring me. I was a little worried about my mother-in-law, but thanks to Easton's kindness, I was able to enjoy my newlywed life, both publicly and privately. A few months later, I was offered a promotion. I told my husband first. Easton, listen. I'm going to be promoted this April, I announced, excited. Promoted to manager? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, my boss recognized my hard work, I said, expecting him to share in my happiness. but his face darkened. Melody, whose credit is that? He asked coldly. What? I was taken aback. You're good at your job because I help with the housework, right? Isn't it strange that you were promoted before me? You're getting in the way of my promotion, he said bitterly. What are you talking about? I asked, bewildered. This didn't sound like the husband I knew. He suddenly blamed me with an incomprehensible theory. The kind Easton I had known seemed like a lie. Wait. You agreed that I could balance work and family, didn't you? I reminded him. Balance? He frowned. Housework is only possible because I help. Can you really say that you're balancing work and family? You're not qualified as a wife. That's not true, I protested, feeling hurt. Easton added insult to injury. If you can't do housework properly, why don't you quit your job and focus on your family? I don't want to quit my job. My boss recognized my hard work. I'll work harder at home too, I replied, desperate to salvage our partnership. I decided to take on all the housework without relying on my husband, hoping he would approve of me. But Easton didn't help at all. He even started complaining about the housework he never commented on before. Did you just grill meat for dinner today? He asked one evening, scrutinizing the meal. Huh? It's sautéed pork, so I seasoned it, I explained, surprised by his sudden critique. Isn't this a shortcut? You only make simple things because you're working, right? He remarked dismissively. My husband started coming home late, saying he was going to drinking parties, and we began to drift apart. Easton, why don't we eat dinner together once in a while? We haven't talked much lately either, I suggested, hoping to reconnect. No matter how much I tried to reach out to him, he wouldn't listen. What? I don't want to eat your lazy meals anymore, he snapped. It seems that even at work, he complains about how I'm cutting corners with housework. That's not all. It seems that my husband has been complaining to my mother-in-law about me, and her attitude towards me has gotten even worse. Melody, you said you would do the housework yourself, but it seems like you haven't been cooking at all lately, she criticized. That's because Easton hasn't been coming home, I explained. Excuses are unbecoming, his mother replied coldly. Your husband isn't coming home because you're not doing your housework. As a wife, you should create a home he wants to come back to, my mother-in-law admonished me. I'm sorry, I muttered, feeling defeated. From the beginning, Easton, who graduated from a top university, and you, who graduated from an unknown local university, were never a good match. And yet you're so cheeky as to want to work together without even being grateful for getting married, she concluded. Even if I wanted to talk to Easton about it, he had started coming home in the morning, not just late at night. Easton, are there really that many company drinking parties? I asked him. Who are you drinking with all the time? He dodged the question, saying, You don't need to know that. Even couples need privacy. I felt something suspicious about my husband's words and actions, but he didn't try to talk to me anymore and immediately locked himself in his room. The next day, I was convinced that my intuition was right. On my way home, I realized I had forgotten something at work and was on my way back when I encountered Easton walking arm in arm with a strange woman. I immediately sent him a message. Easton, are you still at work? I have something important to tell you. Can you come home? He replied, I can't come home because of work. My husband was clearly lying. Has he been pretending to work and meeting women like this all along? I confronted Easton, who came home in the morning. Welcome home, I said, waiting for him in the dark room. What? He was surprised to see me. I told you I had something important to tell you, I continued. Can't you wait until tomorrow? I'm tired from work, he replied. Work? Is meeting women part of your job? I exclaimed indignantly and showed him the secretly taken photo. His face changed quickly, but he immediately said, This is your fault too. If you were a better wife, I wouldn't have been wandering around with other women like this. What? That doesn't mean you can cheat? I tried to stay calm, but my voice trembled with anger. Easton frowned and stayed silent, unwilling to respond. I grew angrier at his stubborn silence. I'm doing most of the housework, and I'm doing my duty as a wife. So what's the problem? I asked, exasperated. It's because you're acting all high and mighty after your promotion, he muttered. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm angry because you act so high and mighty after being promoted, he continued bitterly. You can't even do your job that well. The only reason you were promoted is because your boss likes you. Don't get carried away, my husband concluded. With Easton's words, I finally understood why his attitude had changed so much. He was simply upset that I had been promoted before him. If that was the case, he should have worked harder himself. All Easton did was hold me back, and I felt my respect for him fading. Without noticing my growing indifference, my husband continued justifying himself. You said you were doing most of the housework, but everything you do is subpar. Subpar? I echoed, shocked. The house is dirty and the food is terrible, he said with a sneer. Try putting yourself in my shoes, living in such an unpleasant environment. The reason I cheated was because you're an unqualified wife who can't do her job properly. Easton's triumphant smile made me angrier than ever. I understand. If that's the case, let's just get a divorce, I responded. Ignoring his stunned expression, I quickly packed my things and left the house. The next day, I signed the divorce papers and sent them to my home. Then, I rented a new room and started living alone. A few months later, I was suddenly awakened by a phone call from my mother-in-law early one morning. As soon as I answered, she began to shout, I can't believe you didn't show up for your husband's surgery. You're an awful daughter-in-law. This is unacceptable. What? What are you talking about? I don't have a husband or in-laws, I replied, bewildered. What do you mean, Melody? You're Easton's wife, aren't you? Have you finally realized how unsuitable you are as a wife? She kept accusing me. My silence made her sigh. Well, never mind. If you want to be recognized as a wife, come to the hospital right now, my mother-in-law demanded. Apparently, my ex-husband had been taken to the hospital after hitting a guardrail while driving on his day off. When I heard the name of the hospital, I calmly told her, Mother-in-law, haven't you heard from Easton? We are already divorced, I explained. What? Divorced? She gasped. Yes, we got divorced because of his infidelity, I replied. Infidelity? My mother-in-law screamed in disbelief. Without paying attention to her shock, I continued. Moreover, he blamed me for his infidelity and said he wasn't at fault. My son isn't at fault. That's right, that must be it, she muttered to herself as if she understood everything. Easton would never cheat on his own. If he did, it's your fault for being a bad wife. I was amazed that my mother-in-law was echoing Easton's words. I repeated calmly, even so, infidelity cannot be justified, can it? My mother-in-law suddenly fell silent. I gave up on questioning her and finally told her, Oh, by the way, mother-in-law, thank you for calling me today. What? What are you thankful for? She asked, puzzled. I was worried about where to send the reminder letter because Easton had moved out of the apartment. Reminder letter? She asked. When we divorced, I claimed compensation, but the payment is currently overdue, I responded. At the word compensation, my mother-in-law suddenly became flustered. Before she could say anything, I continued. I thought it was inappropriate to involve you in our marital affairs, so I was hesitant to send it to you. But thanks to you, I know where Easton is now. I'll go and deliver it right away, I concluded. My mother-in-law hurriedly stopped me, saying, Wait a minute. Easton just had surgery yesterday. Don't do anything that will hurt his wound. To which I replied, But even if you say that, if I miss this opportunity, Easton might run away again, right? Wait, she pleaded. We have to pay for the surgery now. We can't afford to pay compensation. He doesn't have much savings, so I have to pay for the surgery. I had a suspicion that my ex-husband might have used his savings for the affair. But that's his own fault, and it's not a reason to stop claiming compensation. My mother-in-law entreated me as I remained silent. Then tell me the name and address of the affair partner. Easton will surely leave you and be with her. I would ask her for some money. Oh, I think that's an impossible request, I replied. Why? She asked. The affair partner also had a husband. Moreover, even though the affair was discovered, they didn't get divorced. They've already paid the compensation in full, so they probably don't want to have anything to do with Easton anymore, right? My goodness, my mother-in-law let out a despairing voice as she realized there was nothing she could do. Ignoring her, I calmly told her, I'll come over there now. You said, come right away, mother-in-law. Wait, please, she begged, but I hung up the phone. I went to the hospital my mother-in-law told me about and handed the reminder letter to Easton, who was exhausted after the surgery. My ex-husband entreated me in a pathetic voice. "Melody, I've been a mess since we broke up. I need you after all. Can't you forget the past and start over?" My mother-in-law followed, urging, "That's right, Melody. You can work as much as you want from now on. If you want to support Easton, who can't work due to hospitalization, now is the time, right?" Disgusted by their selfishness, I told them impassively, "I came here to hand over the reminder letter. If you keep making ridiculous remarks and refuse to pay compensation, I'll take you to court." After telling them that, I left the hospital room without waiting for their response. The word court seemed to have an effect, as my mother-in-law immediately transferred the compensation to me. However, a colleague from my company who visited the hospital overheard everything, and soon word spread that Easton was paying compensation due to his cheating and our divorce. His reputation as a cheater became widespread, and he found himself the center of contempt. Unable to endure the looks he received, he resigned from the company. Easton moved out of his new place and returned to his parents' home. He tried to get a new job, but he aimed only at companies with higher salaries than mine, leaving him unable to find work for a long time. He couldn't even repay the money to my mother-in-law and, needing money immediately, began working as a day laborer to earn his keep. On the other hand, I was freed from Easton and my mother-in-law and could devote myself even more to my work. I was promoted again and felt more fulfilled in my career. For myself, who has worked hard steadily, and for my boss who promoted me and my senior who carefully taught me, I swore to face my work sincerely from now on.